Hello, I'm Dr. Tom O'Brien. Thank you for joining us for the question and answer period. And we've had many questions come in, so what we've tried to do is pick questions by category so that every category that we've talked about in the betrayal series will be addressed. So I have my trusty little hat full of questions, and they keep filling up with more and more questions, so that's great. So this is the first one, and this comes from Pam, and it says, Dr. Tom, how often should food sensitivities be tested? Both my daughter and I have IBS, that's irritable bowel syndrome, and autoimmune conditions run in the family. So very good, Pam, that you're thinking about the history in your family. That means that it's wise of you to be looking at food sensitivities. If you have a food sensitivity, it's going to take somewhere between 6 months and a year before you're not wasting your money to test again. If you are squeaky clean compliant, you do your very best not to have any exposures to the foods that you have been identified by a test that your immune system is responding to, meaning elevated antibodies to that food. If you're squeaky clean, you're pretty safe at going 6 months and then retesting to see if that antibody load has come down. But if you have had an inadvertent exposure, it's safer to wait a year. So a year from now, if you're trying your very best, but you got an exposure here or there, then you're safe at a year. At 6 months, you might find there's not much difference because you've had an exposure. With a single exposure, the antibody load can skyrocket back up, and it'll stay up for anywhere from 2 to 4 months. That's why you want to wait 6 months before you retest again. Let's go for another question. Dr. Tom, for a person who has an autoimmune problem and wants to figure out how best to improve his own condition, how do you decide what practitioner to consult? Is it important to use an MD? What about doctors who've been in the business for 40 years with their specific advertised anti-aging protocol, and now they claim to be functional medicine practitioners? What about a chiropractor or nutritionist who says they can handle autoimmune disorders? It's very confusing to figure out who to consult. Are there specific questions I can ask to vet out whether or not a practitioner will be capable to help? Really good questions, really good questions. I think this would fall mostly into category 1 and the whole concept of autoimmune conditions. What type of practitioner do you look for? Well, I'm a chiropractor, so if you were looking for me, you'd find me under the category of chiropractor. So my belief is it's not the discipline that the doctor was trained in initially, rather it's the postgraduate study the doctor has done. Some of the very finest functional medicine practitioners are chiropractors, or acupuncturists, or naturopaths, or medical doctors. That it's really the outside of their initial training where they gain the big picture overview. You know, you have to learn to crawl before you can walk. You have to learn to walk before you run. So in medical school and naturopathic school and chiropractic school and acupuncture school, you learn how to crawl. In healthcare, you learn the basics that you have to learn. So it's really afterwards. So how do you find someone? The only way I know to be really safe, there's 2 ways. One, talk to a friend who has had great results with a functional medicine practitioner. And if that's not an option, you go to the website for the Institute for Functional Medicine and look for a certified functional medicine practitioner. That's 3 years of added training to whatever degree they have. And then it's a vigorous test to pass before you get the certification as a functional medicine practitioner. The website is functionalmedicine.org. You can go there. Next question. Dr. Tom, trying to change to a gluten-free lifestyle with young children has a few challenges. As much as we try at home, it's not always possible to control what they eat at school or with their friends. On the video, one of your guests said that you can't be 80% gluten-free. It has to be 100% of the time. Surely 80% is better than not trying at all, though. And that's absolutely right. And if you go to episode 4, where we talk about environmental exposures and digestive issues, you will hear that some of the guests that we interviewed say you have to be 100% gluten-free. The science is clear. You really have to be, that any exposures, and this is specifically for gluten, not other food sensitivities, because there's something called a memory B cell. And the only food that I'm aware of for which we make memory B cells is gluten. Now, what a memory B cell does in your immune system, it's what we use with vaccinations. You get a vaccination for measles so that your body will produce a memory B cell. I call them general measles. For the rest of your life, general measles is on guard that if you're ever exposed to a little bit of a measles bug in the environment, general measles turns on the assembly line right away that's already been built with the vaccination to make antibodies to measles. And general measles is around for the rest of his life to protect you, the rest of his life. And the only food that I know there are memory B cells produced for is gluten. So there's a general gluten. And so if you have any exposures with gluten, any exposures, you run the risk of turning on general gluten. That's been a problem that I've known about for many, many years, and it's almost impossible to have some exposure, almost impossible. That's why we came up with these digestive enzymes called GI Shield. And if you go to my website, thedr.com, you'll see the GI Shield and you can read about them. They're the only ones on the market that I know of that work really quickly. And you'll hear all of the explanation there about why that's so important. So I recommend to my patients that they take GI Shield anytime they go out to eat, anytime. And just as a precaution, before you start eating. And in the videos on our website, we explain why it has to be before you start eating. Next one. I know we are using too many antibacterial products and are making our worlds too clean for a healthy gut microbiome. My question is, how can I get enough dirt and still avoid things that will give me food poisoning? I'm so confused about how to treat my food. Really good questions. That comes from episode 3. And the way that I recommend you do that is by focusing on what I talked about in that episode is a little bit of fermented vegetables every day. And you're exposing yourself to different families of bacteria that normally you don't get exposed to. But they're healthy bacteria, and because you're switching out the fermented vegetables every day, every few days, they're different bacteria produced in the fermenting of different vegetables. The bacteria produced on carrots are different than the bacteria produced on bok choy. So that's why you want a variety of fermented vegetables that you're eating, because you're inoculating with a spectrum of bacteria. And why is that so important? You now know, I hope you know, that it's not having any particular probiotics in your gut that's important. It's the whole microbiome. It's all of the variety that's critically important, and that's why you want to use different families of fermented vegetables. And in terms of being in the dirt, walk barefoot on the beach. That's pretty safe. You know, you'll get some exposures there. Walking barefoot on your grass at home, unless it's sprayed. If you've got grass in your backyard that you're not putting weed killer on and things like that, so that's not getting on your feet, walk barefoot around in the backyard. Those kinds of things will help for your kids, depending on where you live. Go out in the country, take walks in national parks. We're less likely to have exposures from spraying for weeds in national parks, so you're safer there. And just let your kids play in the dirt there. Thank you for all the wonderful information in this series. Has there been a case of alopecia universalis that is totally recovered through functional medicine? And this is from Reem. Thank you, Reem. Thank you for your kind words. Yes, there have been many cases of alopecia that have reversed, many. It's another autoimmune condition. So I think the most impressive, to get the big picture overview on this, is Dr. Dale Bredesen's articles on reversing Alzheimer's. 9 out of 10 people with card-carrying Alzheimer's at UCLA, their Alzheimer's research center is called the Buck Institute, they reversed Alzheimer's in 9 out of 10 people in 5 years. It took 5 years. And there are 34 points on the checklist. Do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? Do they have this? So you have to be comprehensive, but that's how you address autoimmune conditions, by being comprehensive. There's no one pill that'll do it. That's why you guys have to be so well educated on the big picture, because there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle. But I want you to remember, it's base hits that win the ball game. Don't go for home runs, just keep going for the base hits, the small things. I want to thank you for being a part of Betrayal, our series. And I hope that you've gotten so much information, you've had OMGs again and again and again. Now our plan is to continue this and to bring out more information. And in order to do this, the support that you give us will allow this to happen. So how do you give us support? Purchase the series. That's why we made it $47, just as easy as possible for all of these experts. And we've done over 80 interviews. There's no way to give you all 80 interviews in a 1-hour summary in 7 days. It's just not possible. So we have bits and pieces. But if you want to see all 80 interviews, that's in the Gold Series, so that's available to you. By your supporting us in owning the series, it allows us to continue this work. So please consider supporting us. Click the button below at whatever level you feel comfortable doing. The download level for $47, the gold level, whatever level feels right to you. Thank you for your support. So I encourage you to own the Gold Series. Go for the gold. What you'll see in these unabridged interviews, you'll see Dr. Jeff Bland and I both with tears in our eyes. You'll see what I call it the three amigos, which is Dr. Aristo Vojdani and Datis Karazian and I sitting around a table for an hour and a half just talking about autoimmunity and how foods impact on it. There's no way to give you all that. You got some tastes of it in the 7-part series, but you get to see all of it together. We will donate a percentage of all of our sales back to charity, and especially working with kids to help kids get through learning about their autoimmune condition and how to address it. So thank you very much for your support. It means the world to us. And you have a 60-day money-back guarantee. So go ahead and click the button below, own the series today. So Molly from Vail, Colorado wrote, is it possible to repair the blood-brain barrier like the gut? Absolutely. Any epithelial barrier, that's the lining in barriers, any epithelial barrier will heal. You regenerate every cell in your body. The question is, do you regenerate a healthier cell or the same disease cell? So anyone, not only the intestinal permeability, the blood-brain barrier permeability, but your bladder permeability if you have interstitial cystitis, any permeable membrane can heal if you create the right environment for it. Thanks, Molly. That's a great question. And Ann in Texas writes, I was interested in the remark by Dr. Kalish that Parkinson's medications have a limited lifespan of effectiveness. If a person has already started Parkinson's medication for a couple of years, but stops to pursue another treatment protocol, can they be resumed later and add more years of effectiveness? Or once you start, is it too late to stop and try other protocols? No, it's never too late. And never stop a medication without the support of the doctor that prescribed the medication to you. We're not encouraging you to stop medication. What we're encouraging you to do is stop throwing gasoline on the fire. So you can take the medications if they're helping while you're going through the protocol, because you're not challenging or interfering with the medication. What you're learning is, how are you throwing gasoline on the fire? And with Parkinson's, the critical component is your microbiome. Critical. So you might want to look and see the impact of the medication that you're taking on your microbiome, but you don't have to stop the medication in order to do these protocols. So Jill wrote in, it's great to learn about protecting the brain from neurodegeneration, but what can be done to arrest and hopefully reverse the degeneration of motor neurons, like in post-polio sequela? And then she wrote, thanks for your fabulous work, capital letters. Thank you, Jill. This series has been great. Thank you. Well, that's episode 6. And if you remember, Dr. Karazian talked about regeneration of nerves is that when a neuron gets damaged, there is a leapfrog effect for the next neuron. You build a new neuron to leapfrog over the one that's been damaged. And you can do that at any point. It's more difficult the longer the damage has been accumulating, but stop throwing gasoline on the fire. Take the things to help rebuild, build the microbiome. The concept is the same, and you will have regeneration occur. And this is Juliet. I appreciate you taking the time to answer our questions. I have Hashimoto's and also this mysterious itch constant around my neck and face. I noticed if I stay away from fermented foods and foods that ferment easily in the stomach, the itch is less. Besides the itch, when I do eat fermented foods, I would squeeze, my eyelids would swell up, and my eyes would be watering and itching. I think I might have a histamine intolerance. I think I also have a histamine reaction with bone broth. For a short while, I've been taking soil-based organisms, but I'm not sure if I get a reaction to this. I do have a lot of food sensitivities. I used to include a lot of gelatin and collagen hydrolysate in my diet until recently. I discovered I have a sensitivity to glutamate foods through muscle testing, through a holistic allergy place in San Francisco. I'm hoping this holistic allergy place I'm going to will help with my food and environmental sensitivities. How can I heal my gut if I cannot eat fermented foods and being sensitive to glutamate foods? I look forward to your answer. Thank you so much. Well, episode number 4 is where this would fall under, and this is a yellow canary in the coal mine. This is one of the really tougher ones. And Jill, one of the things that I would consider you look into is fecal transplants. There's a whole lot of research on fecal transplants. You just have to work with a doctor who's very experienced at this. It's not a field that I'm experienced in, but I have read a lot about it. And for someone like you, who is a yellow canary in a coal mine, it does sound like you have a glutamate sensitivity. So the way the bone broth is made has to be changed for you so that you don't produce as much glutamate in the bone broth. That's done by cooking it much slower at a lower heat. If you look to Dr. Katie Reid's site, R-E-I-D, she had a child with autism and she's a PhD biochemist. She gave up her career to really research her child's biochemistry. What she found was how to work with glutamate sensitivities. So that's a place you can go. That's a really great question. Very tough case. You are the canary in the coal mine. That doesn't mean you can't get well, but you really have to dial down about the glutamate sensitivities. This question is from Janet Touche in San Diego. When streamlining tests after in-depth intake history, how do you decide which tests are most effective and revealing? Food sensitivity, stool tests, mineral hair analysis, organic acids, digestive health. It can get so expensive testing all these things, none of which is done by traditional docs using traditional insurance coverage. My doctor would look at me like I have 10 heads if I asked about these things for me or my patients. Most succinctly, how do you best get a sense of how the gut is really working and how leaky it is? Well, thank you for the question. That's a really good question from this doctor. Episode 3 talks about that in detail. But how do you decide what the priorities are? If you look at Dr. Dale Bredesen's paper from November of 2004 on reversing Alzheimer's, there was a 34-point checklist, and you couldn't not do all 34 points. Because if you miss one, that might be the gasoline on the fire that continues. So how do you know where to start? Well, as a clinician, it's experience that gives you that. And for me, in my practice, the most important things I look for: does this patient need validation of a food sensitivity so that they'll stop eating the food and not just reduce the food, but stop? If they need that, then the tests are really important, comprehensive tests for a gluten sensitivity. So in my practice, how I choose which tests are most important, you'll see them on my website, thedr.com. I would do, in the order of importance, I would do the test called the Wheat-Zoomer test, and then I would do the Gut PAC, P-A-C test. That gives me the overview on gluten sensitivity, intestinal permeability, and the microbiome. Those are the starting points. Those are the tests that are just critical to know about. After that, they go down the list in priority. Some people have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and you have to do a test for that. Some people will have other foods they're sensitive to. You might do a multiple food panel. The list goes on and on, but it's a clinician's experience that tells us where to go. This question is from Amy in San Diego. Thank you for the betrayal series. I have shared it with my entire family. Thank you for doing that. So they will now know more about the protocols I follow and why. What can I expect the treatment to include from a functional medicine doctor if my GI affects stool tests that I have particular bacteria that is causing my rheumatoid arthritis? Mind you, I have been eating a very clean autoimmune paleo diet and have cleaned up as many toxins in my healthcare regime, cleaning and personal care as I can. I'm also working on getting a few mercury fillings out of my mouth with a trained smart dentist, but have seen no relief in my symptoms in over a year. Thanks. The likelihood is that the microbiome is out of balance, and changing the diet is great, but it may not have yet impacted on rebuilding a healthier microbiome enough to calm down the inflammation. So if your symptoms are still there, the inflammation is still roaring. With a situation like that with my patients, I would do a test of inflammatory markers. I would look for I would do a cytokine panel. I would look at high sensitivity C-reactive proteins. So we have a baseline. Okay, here's the amount of inflammation that we have going on. And then in 3 months, I'd check it again, even if your symptoms have not reduced, have we impacted on the inflammation, the level of inflammation with our protocols? If we have not impacted on the level of inflammation with our protocols, we're either, our protocols are not effective, or we're putting a garden hose on the fire, but there is another garden hose of gasoline going onto the fire. And so the garden hose of water is not powerful enough to overpower the garden hose of gasoline, right? So it's either that there's more inflammation that's occurring, that's being fed. Maybe it's the mercury, maybe it's a level of toxic chemicals in your body, maybe it's a mold infection. There are many things that can keep fueling the inflammation, or the protocols you're currently doing are not good enough to override the level of inflammation that's going on. So in the midst of these Q&As, I just want to thank you once again for supporting us and in owning the series. It's your owning the series that allows us to do this and to continue doing it. That's why I made it so incredibly cheap at $47. If what you're learning is not of enough value for you, that $47 is too much, I understand, that's okay, and I'm really glad that you're partaking in the series. However, if you can, we're asking that you support us, especially with the gold package, because there you get all of the interviews, all 87 interviews, I think it's 87, 84, 87, I lost count as to how many it is. But you get all the interviews, and you see things like when I'm interviewing with Dr. Karazian one-on-one, how we just start laughing at some of the silly things that we're saying, and we left that in there because it's just fun to talk to these geeks. You know, it's just fun. And so you'll get to see all the background stuff that's going on. That's in the gold package. So thank you very much for your support at whatever level that you're able to do. Thank you. So, you know, there's a 60-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked, of course. If you don't like it, of course, we'll give you your money. I can't imagine why, but if you don't like it, great, no problem. And we are giving a percentage to charity. I really want to help reduce this level of suicide in celiac kids. And we're supporting the summer camps for celiac kids where they're educated on how to work with this disease that they have, and actually how to work with the mean kids at school that tease them about the disease that they have. So click the link below, click it now, and support us. Thank you so much. This question comes from Leela. If I could eat a microbiome, healthful, restorative food source at each meal, can you please tell me what the top 5 foods would be? The answer to that is get the list of prebiotics. They're so personal. Some people like garlic, some don't. Some people like onions, some don't. That the prebiotics, there's not a top 5 that I'm aware of. The foods that are prebiotics, they're all prebiotics. They're not more so than others. They feed different bacteria. So that's why you want the variety of vegetables that are fermenting to inoculate with the probiotics, and then a variety of the prebiotics from cassava crackers. There's some really good cassava crackers out there. My dear friends at Mission Heirloom have cassava crackers that they will mail to you, mail order, and they're just the best. You want crunch cracker, get the cassava crackers from Mission Heirloom. Any of the prebiotics work, they all work, any and all of them work. They just feed different families of bacteria in your gut. So you don't want to eat the same prebiotic every day. You don't want to just eat onions. Some people, for example, get gas when they eat onions. Not if they have just a little bit, but if they eat too much onions. Well, what does that mean? It means you're feeding too much of a family of bacteria that you already have plenty of. Likely that's what that means. So I just cut back on the amount of onions that you eat in that example. So this is from Therese in Texas. What is the best test to detect SIBO, that's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and Candida? Well, this goes to episodes 2 and 3. And the SIBO test most commonly used is a breath analysis test. And there are a number of labs that do that, Therese. Not hard to find. Most doctors can find the SIBO breath analysis test quite easily. In terms of Candida, what test to do for Candida? We all have Candida. It is a symbiote in our bodies, but if you have too much Candida, that's the problem. How do you tell if you have too much Candida? You check the antibody load. If your immune system is fighting Candida, you got too much Candida. So you would find that if we took 100 people, I don't know exactly the number, my estimate would be maybe 15 of them would have elevated antibodies to Candida. And for them, they've got way too much, and so you have to do an anti-Candida protocol. But not everyone needs an anti-Candida protocol. So the way to tell is if the sentry standing guard, your immune system says, we got a problem with this. That's when you address Candida. This is from Franca, and she asks, I have sarcoidosis. I am continually told that vitamin D is essential to good health, yet I am told that vitamin D can be harmful with this autoimmune condition. What are your thoughts? Well, thank you, Franca, and this goes to episode 1 and episode 4. And you want to supplement with vitamin D if you don't have enough vitamin D. Well, how do I know if I have enough vitamin D? You do a blood test to see what are your vitamin D levels. It's called 25-hydroxy vitamin D. So if your vitamin D levels are low, you need vitamin D. If your vitamin D levels are adequate with sarcoidosis, you might not want to increase your vitamin D levels. But the first place to check is with your level. How much vitamin D do you currently have? Then you can take a look and see, should you be supplementing with vitamin D? This is from Marie in Cincinnati. I don't understand the process of inflammation. It is never actually explained, but the word is used frequently. So is it that a piece of bread is eaten by anyone, not just celiacs, and then hits the intestines, then gets leaked out, then gets attacked, hence inflammation? It's a really good question. Okay, inflammation means there's a fire going on. That's how our immune system responds. So when you eat wheat, for example, any undigested wheat that comes out of the stomach and goes into the intestines, the sentries are standing guard just inside the first part of the small intestine. They're called the dendritic cells. And they're standing guard. If anything comes in, they sound the alarm. When the alarm gets sounded, you start producing these compounds called cytokines. Cytokines have chemical bullets that attack the invader. They just go right in to destroy the invader. How do they destroy the invader? They create an inflammatory cascade of fire inside that invader, whether it's a bacteria or a piece of food that your body thinks is an invader, and it just burns it out. It breaks down the cell walls, it breaks it apart, it burns it out. That's the process of inflammation. So it's cytokines. So some docs will measure your cytokine levels to see how much inflammation you have going on. Hope that helps. So I want to thank you for supporting us in our endeavors here. When you own the series at any level, whether it is the download level or the gold package, when you own the series, you support us in continuing this work. I'm going to continue with this work. We are going to continue. We're going to give you more information in the future on this, but we can't do it without your help. So I invite you to consider supporting our mission by owning the series. When you own the gold package, it makes me smile, to think that you'll be watching my interview with Dr. Jeffrey Bland, my mentor, and you'll see us tear up at one point. Or when you see the entire interview with Dr. Hristo Vojdani and Dr. Datis Karazian, which I called the Three Amigos. We had so much fun doing that. It was about an hour and a half. You see the whole thing. Not edited to give you little bits and pieces, but you see the whole thing. So when you see the entire interview with Professor Yehuda Schonfeld, the godfather of predictive autoimmunity, you may say, my brother needs to hear that, or Uncle Sam needs to hear that, and you will share it with them. So your support allows us to continue this work, and of course there's a 60-day money-back guarantee, and we are supporting the charities that are supporting, especially the kids, with celiac disease and other autoimmune conditions. So thank you very much for your support. Please click the button just below. This one is from No Name. So thank you, No Name. And they said, "Hi, Dr. Tom. I've never entirely subscribed to the idea of autoimmunity, that the body is attacking itself without reason. Could you address whether there are situations when the body is truly mistaking its own cells, tissues as not self, versus collateral damage resulting from trying to eradicate an infectious agent? I ask because often the mainstream approach is to down-regulate inflammation when the true cause has not been resolved, making any improvements generally short-lived." Really a good question. That goes to episode 1 and episode 6. In episode 6, Dr. Karazian explains about neoantigens and neoepitopes. What that means is if a chemical comes into your body like bisphenol A, which it does every day of your life, that chemical can bind onto a protein in your body. Now that protein has got this monkey on its back. The immune system sees this monkey and goes after it to attack it. When it attacks the monkey, it attacks the cell also. Let's say it's a thyroid cell. With the monkey on its back and the antibodies that your body is now producing going after this neoepitope, this new cell, something that's not known to be normal in your body, the result is that you destroy that thyroid cell with the monkey on its back. Now you have to make antibodies to get rid of the damaged thyroid cells. So it's not just the neoantigen, the thyroid cell with the monkey on its back. Now you have to get rid of the damaged thyroid cell. And that's the mechanism. So that's not collateral damage. That's going right after the tissue that the chemical has bound onto. That's what happens with mercury, heavy metals, toxic chemicals, endocrine disruptors. They bind onto our own cells and the immune system gets rid of this cell. Dr. Bland talked about that in episode 1 back in the 1980s. He was wondering, where's this all coming from? The immune system's not supposed to attack self. I wonder if it's really attacking self. And he started thinking about this back in 1980s. And it turns out that it's not usually the immune system attacking self. It's attacking self plus a monkey on its back to get rid of that thing. So it's not just collateral damage, it's really going after what are foreign agents in our body. So I want to thank you for attending this first part of our question and answer period, and we're going to be doing more of this. I'll see you in the next part. I get a sense of how overwhelming this is. I mean, it's taken me years to get this big picture, studying with my mentors, years. I don't expect you to get it overnight, but I'm hoping that this is bringing up for you, I need to learn more about this. And what I've said so often to my patients and to doctors when they want to learn this information is, if you give it 1 hour a week, and I made up the number 1 hour a week, maybe it's 1 hour every 2 days, depending on how critical it is for you, but 1 hour, just Tuesdays at 7 p.m., I'm going to read about rheumatoid arthritis and a holistic approach to dealing with it, or whatever your autoimmune condition may be. And you just keep learning a little bit more. You just keep learning a little bit more. Within 3 months, you've spent 10 hours, 12 hours, 15 hours reading cutting-edge information from our site. You've listened to these interviews again and again, or you've got the gold package and you're watching the 80+ interviews, the entire interview. And so you're learning things that weren't able to be put in the Betrayal series because there's just too much, right? But you're listening to these and you're learning more. 1 hour a week of listening to these interviews. The result will be that you keep developing a deeper and larger picture of what this mechanism is that's going on for you. And I want to thank you for supporting us. It's incredibly honoring to be doing this for you. And your support means the world. It allows us to keep doing this and keep moving forward. When you get the gold package, you get all the transcripts, the printouts like this, you get all the interviews, and you will learn so much in the interviews that we haven't been able to put in the series because of a lack of time. So thank you very much for your support. As always, the money back guarantee is there. We're supporting kids in charities to learn how to deal with their autoimmune diseases. And I guess I would just say it's an honor to be with you. Thank you so much.